Welcome to the 4th annual TLTF Summit. For those that I do not have the pleasure of knowing, my name is Zach Posner. I am a co-founder and a managing partner at the LegalTech Fund and also a co-founder at the TLTF Summit. We are building the infrastructure that we hope is making legal tech thrive. We do this through 3 interconnected pillars: capital, clarity, and community. On the capital side, we invest in companies transforming the world of law. We do this through 2 funds. We have 82 portfolio companies. We are an early stage investor, primarily pre-seed to Series B. We are honored to be on the playing field with these entrepreneurs. If you know them, if you see them, please give them a massive high five here. We also recently announced the LegalTech Lab, where we are now helping entrepreneurs get started at the earliest stage. We're providing them with capital, of course, financial capital, but most importantly, human capital. Our goal here and with our funds are to help our entrepreneurs reach their full potential. Beyond capital, we provide clarity to the space. We are helping everybody in this room hopefully make sense of what's happening. We do this through newsletters. We have our funds flow product, which is summarizing every single financing that happens in the space, all the M&A activity. We're doing deep dives on M&As. We are putting out market maps. We're moving towards once a month. Shameless self-promotion. If you're not getting these from us, please go to legaltech.com. We also put out, from events like this, we want to be putting out white papers. We want to help everybody in this space understand and get all the learnings that we get to accelerate the space. And we also do this via podcasts, where we are out there interviewing all of the entrepreneurs, interviewing the advisors, interviewing all of you guys that are really the ones making the magic happen. So enough about us. Let's talk about this event and the community. This is a little bit of a history. This event we started thinking about this back in 2019, 2020, and we put this slide up last year. You're going to see a lot of slides that have this logo, and I think it's fascinating, which means that we spoke about them last year. And it's pretty awesome to see some of these trends build upon themselves. But here, just for a little bit of background, we talked to a ton of early stage companies, north of 200 a month. We started talking to all the later stage companies that said, who should we be acquiring? We talked to the practitioners, the law firms, the general counsels, the industry providers, the investment bankers, commercial bankers, the investors, our colleagues in other VC funds, and private equity funds, and then of course the public sector. And we said, we got to bring everybody together. That was the origination of the TLTF Summit. We started this is our 4th annual. We started this 4 years ago. December 7th in Miami. What we didn't realize at the time, this was 7 days after the release of ChatGPT, and I think after that public demo, and I think we had no idea what type of impact that this was going to have. You will also notice we didn't invest much in our logo, but what we did do is we brought a community together of about 150 folks, and I think we realized the power that we were all working on similar things. And if we come together, we can help to advance all of our goals. A year later, we moved up the street in early December to Turnberry, and we had a great time. The room grew a little bit to about 400 strong, and we talked about this construct of WHOLUCK. First, we brought the community together, and then we said that every single person to the left and the right can help every single other person achieve their goals. And if we get that right, we're not only helping individuals achieve, but we're helping the entire community and the entire space achieve its goals. And then last year, we started to invest in logo design. We went to the Ritz in Key Biscayne. We had a great couple days. We had a theme there that was basically a quote that Bill Gates said. And he said, we overestimate the change that will occur in 2 years when it comes to technology and underestimate the change that will occur in 10 years. And this was interesting because this was exactly 2 years after the release of that ChatGPT demo that we think changed everything. We took surveys after, we listened to everybody's feedback, and the message that we got was everybody wanted this to be earlier in the year. That's why we're sitting here in Austin, because you had to wait till hurricane season's over in December in Miami. We're at this beautiful place, but can we just take a quick show of hands? Who here was with us in 2022? This is awesome. Can you guys please keep your hands up? Who was with us in 23? Who was with us in 24? This is freaking amazing. Our growth is here because of you guys. So thank you guys, thank you. We started to think about plotting a map as to where everybody was from, and we all are deep believers in AI. So we said, let's go to ChatGPT and do this. And we put it up there, and you'll notice lots of interesting challenges, like apparently the administration, the merger of Canada and the US already happened. I just saw our friend Jim, who lives in Argentina apparently, and half of you actually came from Russia. But on a serious note, people ask us, hey, this event is growing, and it is, and we're actually extraordinarily excited about it. It's not growing for the sake of growing. It's growing because of a concept that we talked about last year. We said historically, legal has sat in the middle of every C-level suite. And what was happening is legal is pushing out. So now we have people that are historically think of themselves as prop tech investors, but they understand that if legal tech is successful, it starts in the office of the general counsel and it pushes out to the business units. But I think the most important part is that construct of HULOC is still alive and well. And just a quick show of hands from the folks that have been here before. Who here has met a prospective funder for your company? Who here has met a prospective M&A target? Who here has met a new person that's kind of changed the output? So you get the sense. And in fact, we kind of think of everybody here as like unique puzzle pieces. This is a piece of swag. We will have swag again this year. But to give you a sense, for everybody that was new this year, we went through a phone call with everybody to make sure that they're a spectacular fit for this event. We spent over 100 hours on these phone calls. So if you look to your left and you look to your right, that same ethos, that same spirit of HULOC should be here, and we're hoping that everybody can achieve their goals. And I guess before we go much further, we're like humbled, honored, and grateful that everybody came out for the summit this year. We appreciate it more than you can imagine, and we're doing our best to put on an amazing show. I want to get a couple thank yous out of the way. The first one is to our advisory board. These folks had absolutely no idea what they were signing up for. You guys are going to learn about the programming in a couple minutes. They put in more calls than you can humanly imagine, and just absolutely grateful to every single one of them, except for one person that ghosted us because they were in the middle of a law firm merger, but they're coming back next year. But everybody else was absolutely spectacular. We don't publish names here, but representatives from these groups helped us with the startup showcase. So for those of you that aren't aware, we'll have presenting companies. I'll explain it to you in a minute. But we had hundreds of applications that we ended up narrowing down to 17 companies. And these judges ended up on whatever the date was in August that applications closed. They received a zip file with 100 PowerPoint decks, 100 videos, 100 applications and websites. And we said, we need you to go through every single one of these and rank them on 5 different categories and do it in 36 hours, I think. So a special thank you to the judges there. And then finally, the summit team. You guys, this thing is just unbelievable what's happened and how the team is growing. There's folks that have helped us pick this spectacular venue, Mark and Heather. There's people on the socials. There's Margot on the social side. There's Eggy on the content side. There's physical logistics with Colleen, and Pinky has just knocked the ball out of the park. There's applications and registration, Michelle, Jay. There's a hospitality team of north of 50 people that are on the ground here. There is a group called a Leaders Quest that's going to help us with some of our themes this year. And then, of course, there's Rebecca, who wears so many different hats that I can't even describe it. So can we just take a quick moment to give a round of applause for everybody? And by the way, TLTF Summit, hashtag, LinkedIn. I was made to take a quick selfie. Can we try to do this really fast? Sorry. Everybody smile. Wait. One more time. Awesome, thank you. You'll see people wearing these t-shirts. The back of the t-shirt says we're here to help. They really are. All right, all that out of the way. 2025, it's been 11 months since the last summit that we want to pick up the conversation and talk about some of the themes that we've seen. And we think about it in three different ways. The construct of changes in the market, movement in how people perceive legal and how technology plays roles, and then what I think is most important, a mindset shift that is kind of starting to happen. First, markets. Nothing new here. My guess is for the last decade we could put this up, but basically you're seeing hourly rates bridge $3,000 an hour. And as that happens, clients are starting to push back in a meaningful way. But what's interesting, they're actually asking firms to explain how they're using generative AI. So we are starting to see things pop up on invoices that say, here's the technology that we used. Last year, we talked about this construct of Moore's Law, authored back in 1975. It basically says that every 2 years, computing power doubles and the cost halves. What's been fascinating about the last couple months, that cycle is now every 7 months. So every 7 months, the power is doubling. That's 243% faster than Moore's Law, which has brought us every innovation that we think about to date. What that really means is today's AI is the worst AI that we will ever see. Last year, we talked about this construct. It took ChatGPT 60 days to reach 100 million users. And just to give you a sense, it took Facebook about 5 years. But as of 2 weeks ago, north of 800 million people are using ChatGPT on a weekly basis. That's 10% of the world's adult population. Those numbers are starting to rival email. Now you pull this back into legal, regulatory, compliance, altogether about a $2 trillion space. And what are we starting to see? We're starting to see an extraordinary amount of capital come into this space. In fact, all of these headlines are from the last 45 days. And there's more from this morning that we weren't even able to get into this. Our friend Scott at Spellbook, posted this up and said, hey, here's what product market fit can look like. Just one quick reminder, you see exactly where that happened. Scott presented on our startup showcase on the first day, which was right there. So good things happen at this event. And please check out those sessions so you can say you saw this stuff first. This was yesterday. I saw Ed. He flew 21 hours to get here from the closing dinner in Barcelona. Clio, billion-dollar acquisition, $500 million round of capital, $350 million worth of debt. Our friend, I know Chris, is somewhere in the back of this room. K2 announced some acquisitions, pulled something out of Epic and another asset. Our friend Lee at Renovus did this deal. By the way, every entrepreneur we're talking about is in this room right now and at this event. I had a whole spiel, but I think it's too soon. So I'm going to skip that. But when we talk about travel, what's happening across the pond in Europe, it's actually an extension. One of our friends is here as well, Crispin. Crispin deregulated the UK in 2007 to allow for non-lawyer ownership in law firms. But now we're seeing the regulators over there approve AI-driven law firms. We are also seeing a ton of capital being invested in these companies. So, quick summary of the market. It seems like the demand is real, moving towards some sense of urgency, and it's backed by a lot of capital. On the movement side, historically, when people think legal, and from a technology perspective, from a legal tech perspective, everything's kind of bundled together. You have the cream that represents the AML 100, call it the bet the company types of legal work. You have the core, which is the run the company type of stuff and the day-to-day of legal. And then you have the commodity. And historically, all of legal tech's been thought of in one bucket. We are seeing, I don't know if this is a word, but effectively the trifurcation of this when it comes to technology. And when you look at the cream, I think people think, everybody was aware there's going to be some stress on the pyramid model. But nobody exactly knows what this is going to look like. Is this going to be an hourglass? Is this going to be a diamond? Is this going to be a barrel? We are also seeing at the highest level, we are seeing some of these law firms team up with the biggest tech companies. And we don't know if these partnerships are for headlines or if they turn into meaningful things. You move into core, this is something that's actually blown me away. Our friends that run personal injury law firms, this is, I hope y'all aren't calling these folks, because what's happening is people are at the worst time of their lives when they have to call a personal injury firm. They've lost a loved one. They've been in an accident. And, it's a business, so they spend billions of dollars on marketing. And the whole goal is to get people to call a phone number when something happens. So traditionally, these are high-stakes calls, and they're answered by people. About a year and a half ago, we started talking to entrepreneurs, some of which are in this room, and they said, hey, we're going to have an automated call center. And we're like, you've lost your mind. There needs to be empathy and emotion, and people are calling at their most difficult times. But we talked about the doubling cycle. We've now been through technology that doubled and then doubled again. And now all of a sudden we're seeing empathetic robots that can take these calls, and they're doing it at scale. By the way, Eggy brought me this image, and I thought it was E.T. And she's like, no, it's Wally, it's the empathy. And then I told this to my wife, and she's like, I need to start spending more time with my kids. But, but that's just blowing me away. And then on the commodity side, historically thinking about high volume type of work, things like doc review, this is moving into things like IP portfolio management. This is looking into cybersecurity, data privacy, regulatory compliance. And I think that ALSPs, by the way, for those that aren't familiar, it's alternative legal service providers. That space is growing quicker than the law firm space. And it's all driven by cost. So if you ask me where I think there's an extraordinary amount of opportunity for these folks to either partner with technology companies or for tech companies to try to take their run at it, it's right here. Every subject that we're talking about, by the way, if you're not familiar with it, there are panels correlated to these subjects, but we'll talk about that in a second. A mindset shift, the biggest thing that I mentioned to you guys from my perspective. Are you an artisan? Law school trains lawyers to be artisans. Everything is bespoke and custom work. Or does the future more look like an engineer? People that are creating efficient, replicable, and scalable types of products. For us in this room, I think the way to think about things is we're all product managers. There's all of this new technology out there, and we need to experiment with it. And on that note, we all have to be comfortable pushing this innovation, because innovation is effectively this construct of failing regularly. And we have to be comfortable with that. And I think about that as we talk to different organizations. Who's comfortable on that side? But we believe this stuff starts with people, it goes to process, and then it goes to technology. And I think this stays for a long time in this vertical. Quick show of hands. Who here pays for AI tools that you use either with your personal card or your corporate card? Yeah, that's pretty awesome, and it plays right into this next slide that says there's a shadow AI economy that's building up where workers are just purchasing things and they're using them. In fact, 50% of in-house teams say they're skipping procurement, they're skipping IT when they buy these IT tools because they just want to move, these AI tools, because they just want to move quicker. I can't tell if this is good or bad, but 20% of people fully trust agentic AI. They don't even need to check it They just fully trust it. But this is a huge shift that we've seen. So those are the three big trends we're seeing, market, movement, and mindset shift. But it still leaves lots of big questions. You know, last year we talked about this construct as to like, what's the level where things win? Is it the platform? Is it the model? Is it the Magnificent Seven? Then you can even bring that back and say, is it a AI legal associate? Or is it a very specific vertical tool? And I think we've seen examples of all of this play out. And we're not exactly sure how it's going to be won quite yet, but a couple things we're seeing, you know, or a couple corollaries that we see. One is there's tons of agentic browsers that are being launched. And if you guys remember, we're going to give a couple examples around browsers, but browsers became really a winner-take-all space. You know, we've seen these incumbents that everybody like counted out for dead. I mean, this is what the articles were a year and a half ago, saying Google hasn't done anything in AI. And they basically determined they were going to flip some switch. And now all of a sudden, they've caught up in a major way. And by the way, so has their stock price. We're seeing the big companies hiring for roles like AI legal and compliance tutor. You know, we're seeing OpenAI hire lawyers, hire bankers. And it's actually funny because we're even seeing the law firm building personas for their partners where an associate can ask all of their partners how they would work and view a specific matter. And I guess on that note, the big thing that we keep getting asked about and we think about every single day is the construct of training. And, you know, there used to be this fiction that by doing the grunt work, you were learning how to be a lawyer. Or my first job, I remember getting dumped into a data room, a physical room that had binders of data, and somebody thought that a good idea for training would be me keying every single number in a PDF into Excel. And I would spend days and nights doing just that. You know, versus nowadays, you're seeing law firms saying, you know what? We're going to pay for you to go get a year master's degree in legal tech before you start practicing. We were seeing law firms take the Google approach. Their employees can take a day a week to experiment with some of these concepts. What we do know is that the World Economic Forum says these are the 10 fastest growing skills by 2030, and none of them are taught in law school. The job descriptions that we see from in-house, they want to bridge law, strategy, and technology. Our friend Dan Hunter and our friends at PricewaterhouseCoopers used these slides. It basically said, if two companies start using technology historically, one at time 0, one at time 1, you can see that the catch-up distance is really never that big. But what happens when they start using these AI tools? It accelerates significantly. And we believe that you're going to see, you know, what we're calling K-like outcomes. And the folks that are comfortable with this stuff are going to be the haves, and the ones that aren't going to be the have-nots. And there's going to be no difference in between. There's going to be no middle ground. So to pull it all together, we're seeing lots of different forces. We're seeing lots of change. For those that were with us last year, the same amount of slides was used to describe 1975 to 2024, 49 years. Everything I just told you about is the last 11 months. Think about that for a second. So back to this event. In 22, we said, let's bring this community together. In 23, we talked about HULUC. Last year, we talked about this Bill Gates construct that said people overestimate the change in 2 years. They underestimate the change of technology in 10 years. And this year, we're thrilled to have a theme of the construct. We want to make the future feel familiar. And we're going to do this through a project that we call Pathways. And this is going to be a year project that's kicking off today. And it's our attempt to build a 15-year roadmap for the entire industry that everybody can take and use with their colleagues, use with their organizations. We're going to open source it. And everybody's going to have a chance here to be a part of it. And just to think about that 15-year journey, if we press rewind and go back to 15 years, 4.3% of white-collar workers were allowed to do something called telecommute for a half a day a week. Do you guys know what the number one technology was to facilitate the telecommute? It was Skype. Back then, 98% of web traffic came from a desktop. Think about your habits today and how they have changed. We talked about browsers earlier. Internet Explorer had 70% market share. You know, we saw what happened there. This one I had to toss in because we were excited about this. There was 100 billion pictures taken globally in 2010. Last year, there was 2 trillion. So how do we navigate the next 15? We talked about this concept of pathways. Last year, we put up the crystal ball and we said we don't have all the answers. We still don't have all the answers. But what we think is important in this construct is to find the right questions to ask. And if we ask the right questions, we start seeing the future emerge around us. So you're going to see these cards around the entire session. We would encourage you to think about them, read them, and bring them into every dialogue. You know, here's an example. What's the true value of legal services? Time, outcome, or confidence? I was with somebody last week, and they said, Zach, this technology is absolutely amazing. It can summarize a contract for me in 12 seconds. But the reason I'm still valuable to my clients is because they want to know if they should sign that contract. This one, we're talking, lots of entrepreneurs in this room are trying to help technology fade into the background. So if conflicts can be prevented before they occur, what happens to the business of law as we know it? We'll skip them, but these are all over the place. Think about them as you enter into all the conversations. But the thing that we need is a way to make sense of all of this, and we're going to use a framework to get there. And the framework that we're going to use is something called a 3 horizons framework, and it really says that there's 3 things happening at the exact same time, 3 different worlds. The first one is the red one, and I'll go through each one of these, but it's business as usual. The next one is the entrepreneurial journey. And then the third one, the green one, is the visionary world. So this is plotted on a simple graph where the bottom axis is simply time. So we're going to try to use a 15-year lens here. And the y-axis is pattern. And the more persistent the pattern is, the more that we are used to a pattern, the higher that it gets plotted. But those are usually the things that are in need of transformation. So the first horizon is this construct of business as usual. These are the things that we expect to happen every morning when we wake up. Or you guys walked in here, you expected there to be electricity. If you live in New York, you expect the subways to be running. And these are just the patterns that we're used to every day in life. At the same time that this is happening, there's kind of a new world being created. This is like the visionary lens. This is the people that are teasing ideas out. And I'm going to give you an example in a second. And then in the middle, we have the entrepreneurial journey, innovating on kind of the past and hopefully doing one of 2 things, bridging us to the future, or those things kind of die out as well. So simple example is the construct of cash. You guys all pretty much traveled here in the last 48 hours. Quick show of hands, who here used cash? Look around for a second. I don't know if I saw anybody. Think about that. Think about how persistent of a pattern that was just 5 or 10 years ago. Another show of hands, who here has been into an Amazon store where now you can just walk in and now you don't need to do anything. You just walk in, you grab what you want. It's a frictionless process. No cashier, no payment. We look at something like this as the 15-year journey. In between, we have the Apple Pay, we have Venmo. Are these things that bridge us to the future? Or are these things that just slowly fade away and a new future emerges? So this is what we're hoping over the next couple days that we start thinking about these. And I think you're going to see us publishing a lot of information about this. Because the big question is, how do we prepare for the future? And we start by asking the right types of questions. Because the interesting part is the answer's here within this room. This is the team that's going to figure these out. This is where the new businesses, or the visionary businesses, the entrepreneurial businesses are all going to come from. And our goal is quite simply is to help like cognitively prime this entire industry. So by the time 2040 comes, the future feels familiar. And look, lots of different ways this goes. I don't know if you guys saw this, this Financial Times article recently, the last couple of days, but it basically says, this can go one of two ways. There can be singularity and the end of scarcity, or there can be human extinction. So we're hoping for the better answer here. And then I know some of you guys are gonna say 2040, I wanna be on the beach. But in the meantime, our ask is for the next couple of days, take a look at these cards, think about them. If you're interested in this, please join us tomorrow afternoon. There's a networking event where we're gonna be talking about this. And then Friday morning, there's a facilitated breakfast that we'd love you to join as well. Now that we're expanding into programming, we have 8 tracks covering everything from AI to investing in law firms, which is coming. We have 15 panels asking questions like the legal system. What if the legal system ran like software? We have 7 education sessions. We have 2 fireside chats. We have 15 roundtables. Very important, we have our startup showcase. These are companies doing less than $10 million in revenue. The judges went through hundreds to pick these 17. Every year, the stages have been growing as these companies have been growing, as this space has been growing. We have a scale stage that's going with companies from $10 million to $25 million. And then we have a growth stage where companies are presenting that have greater than $25 million in revenue. What has been amazing is some of these companies have gone from stage to stage to stage over the course of the last 4 years. Think about that. Companies getting started to over $25 million in